Hey everyone, my name is Ben Gromicko. I'm from InterNACHI, that's the International Association of Certified Home Inspectors. And right now we're doing a live, free, online, interactive InterNACHI webinar. And we do a bunch of these webinars and they're all video recorded and they're all free to and open to everyone, members and non-members alike. So if you'd like to register for a webinar, go to this URL, ready? nachi.org, nachi.org/webinars, nachi.org/webinars. And if you miss a webinar, no big deal. We video record them and they'll be all at that URL, nachi.org/webinars. And then if you're driving around and you want to listen to a webinar, we actually export the audio of the webinars into our podcast. And that's at nachi.org/podcast. So nachi.org/webinar or webinars and nachi.org/podcast. Today, we have a really great webinar. I asked another home inspector to please do a presentation on a home inspection that he did. And it's Mike Leggett from Atlanta, Georgia. And he owns a multi-home inspector group, my BrickKicker company, and he's doing successfully well. And he has taken the time out to share what he knows and would like to share with other inspectors. Maybe you're a veteran, experienced inspector, or maybe you're just starting off. And this is why I really appreciate when we have an expert, a veteran, someone experienced who decides to give to others. And Mike is also an InterNACHI mentor. And he's a good guy, and he has something to show us today. He's got a ton of pictures from an inspection that he did, and he's going to share that with us today. Mike, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I see a picture of you. This is the first picture in your slideshow. What is that?
Well, I was took over Nick's office one day while he wasn't paying attention and sat down. But I was up at the InterNACHI headquarters in Boulder for a conference. I think it was 2017. It could have been 2016. I don't recall exactly, but the BrickKicker had a conference there. They hosted us, and it was a great experience. We got to check out the House of Horrors and the brew pub down the street, and had a great time.
That's awesome. You look great there. And so for those who are attending the live webinar, feel free to ask questions as Mike's going through the slides and pictures, inspection pictures that he has. Anything that pops up in your head, feel free. You can use the chat feature. I kind of like the question and answer feature. If you have it on your side, it's a Q&A button. And if you like the questions that are being asked, you can upvote the good questions. So I'll pay attention to the questions and the chats. And Mike, take it away. Show us what it's like to do a home inspection in your company.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with my cover page. Just a quick introduction of this home. This is a single family home. It's not very large. It has a crawl space. It's built in 1945. And the reason I was inspecting it was, wasn't inspecting it for a buyer. There was a guy that I know that was selling a property with 3 homes on it. And this has been in the family since it was built, probably never been inspected. And it's been a rental for a while, but it's about to go on the market. And I'm not sure what's going on in everyone else's market, but one of the challenges that we've had and that we hear about talking to inspectors around the country is that so many people are waiving inspections and so many things are going on the market as is. You know, how scary is that, you know, for a buyer, and is it really a mistake? Well, obviously, a lot of people will probably get away with it and be fine, but we've just seen a lot of absolute garbage on the market that in a normal year would never be listed to sell, that was a rental for a long time and producing rental income, but now suddenly people want to sell and get top dollar for it, and we see some crazy things. And so I was hoping to see some crazy stuff in this house, and I think I did. So I'll talk a little bit about our process as we go, but this is the street view. So just pulling up to the house, and you know, this might potentially be a cover photo because there's not a pretty angle of this home, but we see some problems right away. You can see the grade is level with the front of the porch. A lot of work's been done at the front of this house. They sort of trenched around the front porch a little bit, so I think they were trying to make it better. They cut back some shrubs. I think they've even power washed it. Like they're really getting this ready to sell, but this obviously has some pretty significant grading issues. And so right away, stepping out of the vehicle, we know the crawl space is going to be fun. And so we've gotten some feedback from people in other parts of the country. I have a friend who has a home inspection in our market, and he said he had some guys from Utah came out and ride with him for a day, and they said if they had to do this every day, they wouldn't be in the inspection business. So these can be a little bit rough, but here's another view of the front, and you can see the grading issues from this angle as well, and you can see it's an older home. You know, they put the vinyl siding on a long time ago, and who knows what they were covering up, but that's just our street view. So I started with roof photos, but really one thing I've always done is I've always inspected the exterior first, and then the roof second, and primarily because I'm looking for, I try to inspect as efficiently as possible, and I'm not going to walk every roof, so I usually look for roof access while I'm inspecting the outside. You know, sometimes it could be a really large house, and maybe the back porch is the best way to access the roof. The back porch covering might be a little bit of a lower pitch. But anyway, in the presentation, I started off with the roof, but just have a couple photos of the roofs. You can see already that there's two different roof coverings on here. So from the street, it looks like a newer roof, but have an older material on the back. So just a couple photos from different angles of the roofing material. There's some metal roofing on the back, and that's actually over a living space. So that's that tough rib material. And view of the front, we've got some vegetation overgrowing the front of the roof a little bit. And maybe you can see this valley flashing here is pretty corroded. But there's actually 2 layers of shingles on the roof. It's kind of wondering why there's only, you know, the back has that older architectural shingle on it, and the front's got a newer 3-tab, but they both have 2 layers. So I was kind of wondering if maybe they just got out of sync decades ago and they just kept rolling with it. But two layers on the back is the new and the old. And just another view of the roof. There's actually, I didn't get a close up of this front porch roof, or I guess it's the side porch roofing. That's actually a different age 3-tab, also 2 layers, but yeah, I got all kinds of stuff going on up here. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about the standards of practice at all. I was reviewing them yesterday to see how compliant I was. It's not something I do on a regular basis.
Well, what does your company do? What is your company? There's a standards of practice, but it's minimum. And yeah, it says you're not required to walk on a roof. But our company, my Peach Inspections company, we tried to walk on a roof all the time. I mean, my co-owner was a roofer, so we were up on the roof as much as possible.
Yeah. So we try to walk, I guess. So I'm always hesitant to try to tell my inspectors to walk every roof. They just have different comfort levels, obviously, because you know they don't all have roofing backgrounds. They all have some construction background, but you know, I have one inspector who's a daredevil, and I see him on climbing things sometimes, and I want him to get down. And but generally, I tell them, you know, as long as they feel safe doing so, that they should. And we say that we should first walk the roof if we can, and if they can't walk the roof, they need to put a ladder up on the eaves. If they can't get a ladder to the eaves, it may be too high for that. All of my inspectors have 28-foot telescopic poles with cameras on them. We're all using the ferret camera. Is a great camera for something like that.
Yeah.
So pole camera is third, and binoculars are really a last resort. And I don't ever want them to say, and I don't ever want to see in the report that it was just inspected from the ground. that is the minimum standard, but I want them to, at the very least, use binoculars. And if they can't see it from there, then maybe it just needs a disclaimer in there that it wasn't fully inspected.
Yep.
But
Yep.
but I had a experience several years ago where I had walked the roof, but I hadn't viewed it from the ground, and there was kind of a large hole in the roof, like maybe like 2 feet up from the eave, and it was it was a single story ranch style, and when I was walking around the outside, I was focused on the exterior, not on the roof. So I think it's best practice to view from the ground, even if you have walked it, because there are what I call these dead zones, like right here in an older home like this. I'm not going to walk in this area because there could be some holes from old vents that were covered up and not repaired, and the roof decking, you have broken boards sometimes, just rotted sheathing. So I prefer not to walk around in the field very much. I stay on the ridge and stay in the valleys. So it's I think it's best to look at both.
Good tip. Good
The
tip.
ground and the roof. So I'm gonna keep going. This roof here, when I got inside, I don't have a ton of interior pictures because there was just so much stuff to look at outside and under the home. But this roof is leaking, and when we get a little bit closer, we can see that someone has sealed every screw head, and this material, it really isn't appropriate for a flat roof. And this is a flat roof. It has a slight pitch to it, but you can see water ponds on the end here, and it's going to leak. If you're going to put this on a low pitch, it needs to have every seam sealed, and it's probably still going to leak because these screw heads are going to get loose, and a hole becomes a funnel really quickly.
Mark just asked about drones. Does your company do drones, or no, or not necessary, or not even thought
of? So I have 6 inspectors, and I bought a couple of drones a few years ago. I had 3, and it just seemed like it was going to be really difficult to be compliant. And the larger your company has, or the larger your company is, the more likely you are to have compliance issues with whoever's regulating things. So we also have an airport very close by. So I live in Athens, Georgia. I have friends that work in Atlanta on a regular basis, and it's just problematic using a drone near an airport. So you may not be able to use it in a lot of places. So it's just not a promise that I feel like we can deliver. And I've always seen it more as a marketing thing. But if I was a single person operation, I would absolutely use a drone. And I had an inspector that worked for me a few years ago. He unfortunately, he got a job offer from a relative that he couldn't pass up, and he moved on. He's a construction manager for a commercial building company, but he used a drone, and I was totally fine with that. He got licensed, and he was willing to maintain it, and he bought his own drone because it was nicer than the ones that I had. So I think they're a great tool, but just for my operation, I provide tools for my inspectors. I don't know if it seems like that's a little unusual in our industry, but I provide all their tools. I provide their vehicles. I pay for their gas. Like they're awesome inspectors, and so I don't want to maintain drones or drone licenses. So no, but I think you should if you want to. So just another picture of the edge. So we know that we're getting some surface tension there. It's ponding, and then it's probably running back underneath and running into the living space. So we'll expect to see some water staining there on the inside. I have this problem at my house. I have an older home that's got four shed roofs. 3 of them are flat, and it had tar and gravel that someone put this tough rib under. It looks like they did it themselves. It wasn't even square. Yeah. So I'm very familiar with this being an issue.
I lived in a townhouse. It was a 40-year-old townhouse. My wife wanted me to fix things up, and I'm like, no, this is so good for like inspection videos and training and
Yeah.
things. So I never hardly ever fixed anything. And that's what you get with I guess the shoemaker never fixes his own shoes.
Yeah, well, you're right. It is great for videos. Like if I want to talk about the wrong way to vent a gas water heater, I can just go outside and snap a picture because whoever vented mine, they sidewall vented it from the basement, and there's no booster fan on it. It does go 3 feet up, but it's only about 6 inches from the sidewall there.
Hmm.
And I can tell how cold it is outside when the water heater goes out because it backdrafts enough to blow it out. Um, but we have lots of carbon monoxide detectors down there, and yeah, and I should fix that.
Yep.
So just a shot of my vehicle because I was standing there and I thought, hey, let's get a picture of that. But here's a valley in the front of the house. So it was kind of rusted out at the bottom. So I would expect this to leak. This looks like the valley I did when I tried to roof a house back when I was a house painter. About 20 years ago, I thought I'd save some money on my first house. Roofed it myself. I did an exposed valley and it leaked. That roof made it about 7 years before it was replaced because it was so poorly done. But if you're going to have an exposed valley like this, it really you probably need some ice and water shield below it, and these seams, the edges here should be sealed, and we don't see that. So you would expect water to come down this plane and overshoot the flashing and the other direction too. This next one I wanted to ask you about. So I hear people talking about that you're not supposed to weave a valley when you have architectural shingles, but I've asked many roofers about this, and of course they're the ones that are screwing it up. So maybe I shouldn't ask them, but I've never really found a straight answer on that. If it's, it does need you should have that water shield underneath it more than just your regular vapor barrier. It should have some sort of protection below it in the valley. But what do you think about this, Ben?
I've never heard of a problem with that.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't call it out, but I love this kind of stuff. I'm gonna look it up. So see if I can find some answers. But if I was a home inspector and I didn't know, I probably wouldn't call this out as a defect unless I actually knew some kind of code, local standard, something in my past that I can refer to. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually I tried looking it up, and I did phone a friend also, but I just I couldn't really find anything on there. So I did see some installation instructions for a manufacturer that just said you need that ice and water shield below it, and I think it's supposed to come out pretty far too. But yeah, I wouldn't call it out either, and yeah, one of the things when you look these things up is you find a bunch of home inspector websites that conflict each other.
That's right. And code is always silent on manufacturers' recommendations on how to install something.
Yeah.
So I would go right to the manufacturer of the shingle and see if they actually have guidelines on weaving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we have some, you see somebody tried to seal the edge of the shingle here, and that always kind of raises an eyebrow. Is why would somebody go to the trouble to do that? So I would say this is probably leaked at some point. I don't really know, but somebody sealed it up and it cracked. So maybe it's going to leak again. I don't know. I would certainly report that, and if when we go inside, we're going to look for water staining in the attic. And in this case, we really didn't see much, except there was one area where we did. But I always tell buyers, when they can, ask the seller why someone would seal this up. And if it was because there was a leak, well, we should assume it's going to leak again because it's cracked. So we got a nice screen on the chimney here, but still going to be some rainwater going down it. And, it's obviously it's had some moisture issues in the past, but this chimney was abandoned So I guess they didn't want any nesting in it, but they didn't really think about the water going down it. So I would recommend putting a cap on here, or maybe remove the chimney the next time they replace the roof and get it down below the roof line.
Yep.
It's just an unnecessary roof penetration at this point. So the next few slides just show the massive amount of tar that was put on everything. And, if at first you don't succeed, put some tar on it. So we always call this out as maybe a temporary repair, because it's going to crack eventually.
Yep.
And same thing on the turbine vents and the plumbing vent in the back. Everything's tarred. You can see it's not sealed to the flashing there. But maybe they had a few leaks and they went and just tarred everything just to be safe. But I would certainly point that out. And then another flashing in the back. And of course, this plumbing vent isn't tall enough. It's tall enough for Georgia, so we typically will not write these up for height, because we don't have snow here. If we do, it's going to be a ½ inch to an inch. But it's not something we want them to worry too much about. But this has all been tarred up. I would recommend that, and you can see they sealed the boot itself. So I would recommend that they just go ahead and replace this. But another thing I didn't get a great picture of is these. There's these roof offsets, because they have lots of additions. This back part of the house was a back porch at some point. So this is an area where we would expect water to flow underneath the soffit here. And in the front, I didn't put a picture in this presentation, but in the front of the house, you can see where there's water standing on that vinyl soffit from water kind of coming out through the vents. So we would expect that to happen in all of these places. So just really everything just done very poorly, and adding layer after layer. This roof offset, so that everything's vinyl wrapped, so it's harder to see damaged areas like this, but we can see where water splashes off this little offset up, and it's caused the decking to warp there and rot a little bit. And you can see there's multiple layers of shingles here as well. And just some nails that aren't sealed. You always find one nail in a random place. These on the ridge are pretty common to find them unsealed. It's like everyone's getting ready to pull off the job, and no one wants to climb back up there with a caulk gun to take care of that last thing. I imagine that's what happens anyway. So this is that side porch that had an older roof, and that roof, it's a flat roof with 3-tab shingles on it. Essentially, it's not steep enough for a shingled roof, and you see it's been leaking, and we see some basically mushrooms growing out of the front. So whenever you see something growing out of wood, it's been really saturated. That's the fruiting body of the organism that's living inside the wood. So there's some surface mold, but this is always a major sign. Sometimes you see it just sticking out of the side of the house, so that there's like a leak somewhere. And there were also I had lots of pictures that I didn't include of just the siding, just lots of holes in the fascia, areas of fascia that were peeling off. Like on this corner over here, it's just hanging off. Just thought of that. I was reading the standards of practice last night, going over it, and that is included in it. We talked about grading when we had the picture from farther away, but you can see that there's a hole right here. And at first I thought somebody was burrowing there, or something was trying to claw its way in. But I think that the grade was so high at the front that water was running onto the front porch. And I think the homeowner sort of trenched around it. And But this is a funnel. This is where water is going to just flow freely into the crawl space, and a lot of it too. You know, there's no gutters on the roof at all, so there's going to be a ton of water going under this house every time it rains. Just a picture of the gas meter. It's turned off. See, it's been locked out, and so we're not going to be able to test any of the gas appliances. But the way they're just running through the side, that's where some larger animals will get in. So can't wait to see who's living under there. And walking down this side of the house, I noticed a sewer smell, and we've got some holes that have been tarred in the side of this vent, and
Awesome.
a crack up the side. You don't usually see the roofing tar on the vent. Maybe it just ran down from the roof. Who knows?
Right.
So
what do you do with those things? I tend to, I just didn't care anymore after 10 years. And then I just stuck my screwdriver through that pipe right there and then took a picture of it. And one picture is worth 1,000 words. I wasn't damaging it anymore. I already had a hole.
Yeah.
So you get up close with pictures, or do you put your finger there or a screwdriver or what?
Yeah, I would probably would have, but yeah, I would suggest sticking something in it. In this one, I was actually having so much trouble with the lighting outside and trying to use a flash outdoors and then trying to use my flashlight outdoors that I got kind of frustrated. It took me about 6 tries to get a good picture, but yeah, I do. I'm not opposed to that, and we all carry just pocket knives that will stick in things, except at the interior. We try not to do anything on the inside of the house. Like one of my pet peeves is pen probes in drywall. It's just completely unnecessary. But outside, yeah, I like to see a knife stuck in the side of something that's rotted. So this deck is a bit of a nightmare. It really just needs to be torn off. There's nothing salvageable about this deck, and I think it's fine to say that, and we would tell a client, we would tell them that this just needs to be replaced and it's not safe. Ask them if they would be comfortable falling suddenly from that height or falling off the side. I like to ask them if they ever watched any deck collapse videos on YouTube. It's a great place to go for encouragement on prioritizing deck repairs. There's some good stuff on there. But yeah, obviously everything is done wrong in here. So I do have lots of photos of the deck, but one thing I don't always take issue with is 4x4 posts, especially if it's lower to the ground. This would be kind of borderline, but yeah, it should be a 6x6. Yeah, just everything's wrong. There's no balusters. Nothing is supported. These rails, we could probably kick them and knock them off if we wanted to. The riser openings, I'm sometimes reluctant to write that up if it's just like two or three steps, but it's wrong. The throat is actually, there was another area where it was only 2.5 inches. It's supposed to be 5 inches. Like, we don't really call out the numbers all the time, but yeah, this is wrong. I didn't see any splitting on the stringers, but sometimes you'll see that it's split right there, and it needs to be replaced. The base of the stringers aren't sitting on anything, so it's pulling the top away. The stringers aren't bearing on anything. They should have some hangers there. Nothing on this deck is bearing on anything except for the decking.
Now, I know this wasn't a typical home inspection during a real estate transaction with real estate agents, but how would you guide your inspectors in navigating this description of this deck. I mean, you just said this should be torn down, but I'd probably be hesitant in saying that as my first sentence during a real estate inspection. How do you work through that?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's tough. Like, it's always it always depends on who's on site, and I would prefer that the realtor witnessed the conversation instead of imagined it later.
Yeah.
And maybe the disposition of the clients, if they can kind of see, well, some people will look at this and not see a problem. You really have to point out every issue. Some people would look at it and they can tell it hasn't been maintained. They don't really understand what exactly is wrong with it, but it just doesn't look safe. So, but yeah, I would, we can list all of the defects, but this is something that's always a challenge. What I would like to see with everything in the report, and I think Spectora is an awesome software for this to work. The problem with inspection software really is that people start using it to write the report instead of writing the report. But I think that ideally an inspection report would have 2 comments about a deck and about a roof also, like about these major things. And one would be the things that are maybe wrong that don't matter, that we don't want to draw attention to. And the other would just be the things that are wrong and are critical or do matter. And in this case, so many things would be in that comment that it would, I would say, say that the deck is beyond its life expectancy. It hasn't been maintained. It wasn't constructed to today's standards, and it may not be safe. And we suggest that they budget for replacement.
Yep.
So we say budget for replacement about a lot of things instead of telling them that they must replace now or they should tear it off. But if I'm feeling really great with comfortable with the clients and they're not too nervous and they kind of know what they're getting into, and the agent is someone that I know well, I'd tell them to tear it off, because that's what it's going to come down to eventually. Whether they realize that now while they're standing there with me, or there's no reason to call someone out to ask to fix it. It would cost more to fix all these issues than it would cost as much to shore it up as it would to replace it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, maybe not with today's lumber prices, but.
But, yeah, Mike is asking, shouldn't this deck just be condemned and tell the homeowner to block it off and stop using it? I've done that several times, a few times in a dozen years of being a home inspector. We just call it a material defect, in that the deck collapse could be imminent. We use that word. It's going to fail if you shake it or get a party going on there. And you got to tell the homeowner it's a real big problem, because we come in there and we try not to shock anyone, but sometimes you got to shock people because this deck is just not safe.
Yeah. I don't know that I would go that far with this one, but certainly sometimes. I have before. I had one a few months ago. I was just asked to verify some repairs, and the buyer, I didn't even do the inspection. One of my inspectors had called out this deck. The posts had settled pretty dramatically. It was on the side of a hill, and the girder had sunk down about 8 inches. It was an old deck, and so I was just asked to verify repairs. I didn't even charge anything for it because it was close to my house, and it was the relative of a friend. And I went out there to look, and they had made the repairs that were asked. Someone asked them to replace the girder, and they, because it was on the side of a hill, they moved it in. They moved it in closer to the building. So now it was the overhang was a third the length of the floor joists, and when I called her, I told her I wouldn't take anybody out past the girder, and
Yep.
that was the selling feature of the house for
Yep.
them, was the deck overlooking the river on the side of the hill. But so there've been a couple times like that, And if you've ever demoed a deck, you know, when you take this apart, everything is just going to be corroded. Like there's not much left of these nails inside the wood.
Yeah.
So yeah, under some circumstances, I would tell people not to walk on it. But you know, we're not you know, I'll raise the flag, but I don't really just generally don't tell people what to do, you know.
Hmm.
But they should know that it's not safe.
Yep.
So this is, you know, it's very rare to see the bottom of your stringer sitting on anything but the earth. But on an older deck like this, you can see the effect. You know, it's pulling away at the top because the bottom is rotting and sinking and settling. And one of these pavers is underneath the middle stringer, but the other two are just sitting on the ground. So again, nothing bearing on anything, including the floor, the joists. And so there's one bolt connecting the deck to the house. This was just kind of curious, like who did it and when and why. I think, you know, maybe the county does require decks to be attached to the house. So I don't know, maybe somebody heard that and bolt on. It's not even in the middle, you know. I don't know. No flashing either. So on the back of the house, we could see there's some asbestos siding that's been covered up, which this was just on this addition. The rest of it had Insole Brick that was underneath the vinyl siding. We could see it in a couple areas at the front. But we always write that up. We don't really make a big deal out of asbestos containing products. We just tell them it's there, and if they're gonna do any renovations, they need to make sure they're hiring a licensed contractor, and we don't recommend that they do it on their own, because the contractor is supposed to do the testing or just treat it as asbestos. Then the decking. So back to the question of whether I would just tell them not to condemn the deck. I walked on it. I didn't feel it wasn't moving around at all. They're 2x6 floorboards, so it's still a lot left to it, but it needs to be replaced. And then I dug out the bottom of the posts a little bit just to see if they were rotted, or how rotted they were, I guess. And not too bad, but obviously it's the base is rotting. That's something that you see on every deck, is that they're not field treated at the base of the post. Like if any piece of lumber that's cut should be field treated if it's going to be touching the ground, if it's treated and rated for ground contact. And I believe in general, it's really just 4x4s and 6x6s, like 2x4s and 2x6s. Those generally aren't rated for ground contact unless they're field treated. And also, I always tell my clients that these are termite resistant. They're not termite proof. Termites have proven that they will eat whatever they want. And if it's wet enough and they feel like it, they may eat some treated wood. It's possible. So just a dirty dryer vent. Looks the same as every house that we've ever seen. It's the only thing normal on this one. All right, so this house, it's got a package unit outside, and we see a lot of these in older homes in Georgia because there's just no way to get a system in the attic or the crawl space. And when it was built, it had a fireplace, and that was its heat source. And at some point, they probably put some window units in, but when they wanted to put in central heat and air, this was the only option they had. Actually, first thing we notice is the condensate drain is just dumping on the ground right there. At least it's not going to run back into the cellar. There's actually a little bit of a cellar here with a concrete floor. And then this drip leg, I always look for the drip leg. So obviously it's very corroded. I kind of wonder if they recycled this from something, because the unit, well, they did. The unit's only it's 2017, so I don't think this would have corroded that quickly unless they were spraying yard chemicals or something on it. But it does have a drip leg or a sediment trap, and this is something we always call out if it's missing. And you know, HVAC people sometimes think it's a joke when it's called out, because they say that it doesn't do anything. You know, there was a sediment trap right at the meter also. But in our area, the gas company, when they come out, if they see this, they're just going to shut it. They'll turn the gas on at the meter, but they'll turn it off at the appliance and flag it. And the last thing a homeowner wants to hear, especially if they're moving in the wintertime, is the gas company tell them that they need to have a drip leg installed for their unit to operate safely, and they call a plumbing company or an HVAC company, and it's $400 when this could have just been done really inexpensively by a tradesperson that was there doing something else. You know, this isn't something you want to make a service call about. We see that a lot. And also this CSST, you know, we try not to beat the CSST to death, because when if it's got a yellow coating on it, it's almost guaranteed to have some issues. Like technically, it should have a sleeve on it where it goes through the wall. It should be protected at the outside of the house. It should have some tape over this exposed stainless steel so it doesn't corrode. There's just lots of things we could say about it. It's not in an area where I think it would be damaged, but I would certainly point this out to the buyer and let them know that it's incorrect. However, you can almost never find a contractor or HVAC contractor or an electrician that really understands or takes CSST issues seriously. At least here. Has that been your experience? Do you have much of this out there?
Not much, some. And so it was funny you mentioned the InterNACHI House of Horrors. InterNACHI House of Horrors has all kinds of piping issues. So we also have a training course, and it's in our plumbing course and things like that. So you can get really familiar with what you should be looking for as a home inspector.
Yeah. Yeah, this product has just caused so much confusion, because it was they didn't really know how to treat it in the code, and the manufacturers couldn't decide whether it needed to be bonded or not. You know, we could probably do like a whole hour class on this, but it's my understanding this product was developed in maybe Japan, I think, and then they just decided in the 90s and early 2000s, it just hit the market pretty hard here, and there was just tons of it before they realized there were issues. And so just areas where you have a lot of lightning, it's more of a concern. So I included this picture just because I always want my inspectors to think about the position of this plug, because we know that if it says it can be turned off in some systems, particularly a heat pump in the wintertime. We have a ton of heat pumps here. If you're looking at a heat pump in the wintertime and someone has flipped this plug in the off position and you didn't notice it, when you go inside and turn the system on, it's just going to blow emergency heat, and you should get a really high delta T because it's running off heat strips, but you may overlook a system that is not functioning. So we always want to verify that there's a dead front cover and verify that it's actually turned on. Not so much an issue with a gas furnace, but here, this isn't sealed to the wall very well, so we know water is going to go into the cellar area here. And but the homeowners just cleaned this off. We always see tons of leaves on here, and on older homes we see lots of corrosion here, and it can be bad enough where it becomes like a rat run. You know, this entry into the crawl space. So just snapped a picture of that. And you can see the walls damaged just from water splashing back up on it. The parging's coming off. And, you know, we always get a picture of the label and we check to see what size breaker we're supposed to have. And this is like a freebie on most home inspections, even like new construction. It's almost always wrong. So it's the max breaker is 25 amps, and it's on a 30 amp breaker. And of course, we get all the data off of the label as well. All right, there is another deck on the other side of the house. Just a couple photos of this one because they're basically the same thing. It needs to be torn off, but these stairs are not built properly. They're not supported. Sitting on the ground, pulling away at the top, just like the other one. And then the deck boards aren't supported on the end and on either side. So how's that? Am I going too fast, too slow?
No. Speaking of that, speaking of time management, at this point during the home inspection, I don't know how long your typical home inspection is for your company. For me, it was 3 hours. At this point, like as a home inspector, my whole perspective of the house starts to shift. Now, you mentioned taking pictures of everything, and now I'm not taking pictures of everything. I'm not even looking at the cosmetic stuff. I'm looking for the major things, right? So that I'm not there all day long. Do you have that kind of thought process of time management with your inspectors?
Yeah, we do. They have a budget just based on the size of the house and the foundation. So we kind of we've been using ISN for a long time, and it's sort of zeroes it in pretty well. I check with them periodically to see, especially with newer inspectors, to see how they're doing with the time that it was scheduled for.
Yeah.
But really, this house is going to be problematic because it's, if there's a buyer present, because there's just so much on the outside. But we always try to show up a half hour before the inspection's scheduled, and my goal was always to have the outside done and be on the roof at 9 a.m. When the buyer pulls in the driveway, because that's usually their biggest concern. And when whatever anxiety they have will just wash away when they pull in and they see that you're standing on the roof. They feel like you got it taken care of. And there's just so much data collection on the outside, and maybe some nitpicky things, or maybe some head scratcher things to deal with. It's better to do that when no one's watching,
Yep.
So
and you're doing great. I mean, I think we scheduled 2 hours, so it's really up to you how fast you want to go or slow.
Okay. Well, yeah, I sort of omitted a lot of the interior stuff because there's not much going on in there. But so this was a duplex at one point, and of course, where I live, you can't turn a single family house into a duplex anymore. So these are really desirable properties if it's got 2 meters on it already. Yeah, so this was a duplex. It's got 2 kitchens and 2 bathrooms, and they had just sealed off a door in the middle. But it was, I guess it was a 3 or a 2-1 eventually, or yeah, it was a 2-1, and now it's like it was a duplex, but it's been opened up. But we got 2 meters here, and so we always look at the service, and I always want to be very deliberate looking for the grounding. I think that's something that's easy to overlook. But this is when we start thinking about how the electrical system is designed and put together. And so the ground here, this is a little unusual in our area to see this, but it's grounded at the service drop. So our ground connection is right here on the neutral, run to the ground. Do you ever see that out there?
No, never seen that.
Yeah, it's actually, it's okay to do that. And it has to be at either the service drop, the meter, or the first point of disconnect. So it could be at the main panel. Our newer building codes are going to require the main panel to be so close to the meter that it's probably just going to be at the meter, or there's going to be an exterior disconnect. But this was acceptable, and I believe it still is acceptable here. We don't see it very often, but I've probably seen it maybe 5 times in 10 years. But this did raise some questions for me that we'll get to, because it's we got two panels inside, and one's grounded and one's not. But this is our ground is out here. So obviously no drip loop here. That's something we would point out, and running through the bushes. So here, this was kind of like a weird chase, I guess, for a plumbing vent. It comes out the wall, goes under the window and back up the top. And I guess somebody was working on it and they never put it back in. So we can expect a lot of water to run into the wall right here. And got some cable running this way. And of course, it's not supposed to be exposed outside for a reason. It doesn't have any UV protection. So we got a couple lights outside. Wiring's just not secured. You like that?
Your pictures are awesome. You should sell them.
Yeah, so another close up of this cable. So lots of shock hazards potentially out here. And then, so I think this is our last picture from the outside, but just crawl space doors. This one is wide open. I don't like to see this when I'm outside, because you know the rest of the time we're inside, so we're gonna wonder in the back of our minds what's living down there, and if we're gonna be outnumbered. So I included a couple of infrared pictures, and we use infrared on all of our inspections, and we don't charge extra for it. I feel like it's a tool that just about everybody has, and I think it's we really use it just to draw our attention to things that we might miss otherwise. So in our process, when we go inside the house, we'll go up to the attic first, but before we go in the attic, we're gonna do just a quick scan of all the ceilings on the upper level. And the reason we do that is because when we get in the attic, we may not be able to traverse the entire thing, or if it's a new home, we're not gonna go damaging insulation and moving it out of the way. So we're going to inspect the attic as best we can, but before I go all the way to the other side of the attic, I really want a reason to go over there. If you know, a lot of times you go up there and there's been lots of foot traffic from the cable guy and the last home inspector, and you can just follow their path. But we want to look and see if there's reason to go in areas that we might otherwise just look at from farther away.
Which FLIR camera do you use? Which FLIR camera?
This is a FLIR E8. My inspectors get the E6 or the E5. I'm the only one who gets the E8. But we're all using the FLIR.
That's great.
I think it's a great differentiator too, especially if you're not charging for it. And just you know, you can say why would you hire an inspector that sees the same thing you see? You know, this is to make a great marketing piece with these things. And you know, your client, they don't know what this means. If or a marketing if they see this in marketing, they don't know what it means. They just think they think it's cool. And it's also you can make lots of jokes about looking for ghost hunting and things like that if you want. But just took a couple pictures of the inside. So, you know, it's an older house. We always expect to see insulation settling. So I don't know that I wouldn't put this in a report. Like, this is really for me to know where I need to look. But, you know, someone buying an older home, even, you know, a 70s ranch, this is much older than that, but even a 70s ranch, you're always going to see that the insulation settled in the wall. And what are they going to do about that? Why do they need to think about that? They're buying a 70s ranch. That's part of the deal.
Yep.
But I expect that when we get up there, there's going to be some missing insulation in some areas. And these are a great tool. We found so many shower pan leaks that we just would not have seen if we didn't use the infrared. And I was under the impression a long time ago that if there was a leak, there was going to be a water stain. And If there was a leak and no water stain, somebody covered it and it was fixed. And that's just not the case. Sometimes it takes a long time for that water stain to appear. So there was a large piece of plywood over the attic hatch. So I thought I was going to have a big opening, but I took it down, and there was 11 by 24 inches for me to squeeze through. And I know some people may not take a cover off if it's screwed on like that, but we do. And you know, the hole is smaller than we would like it to be, but if we can get up there, that's one of the things we tell our clients and agents that we're going to go anywhere we can fit. You know, so we're not going to do anything dangerous, but we can get through that one. So I stuck my head up slowly in case there were any rats, snakes, bats, or possums or raccoons. We've found all of those things in attic spaces here. You can see they put some poison out for the mice. The mice ate the poison, and then they ate the poison dish. They said, we'll take it. And just a picture of a little burrow hole in the insulation. So this is pretty common in just about every attic. And all the insulation up here has been compressed. So I think something was living up here at some point and just walking around a lot. But it's been there for a couple decades. So. So going back to our roof discussion, like we got a couple boards in a row that are broken here. You know, I only weigh 160 pounds. So it would probably support my weight. We've got an extra layer of shingles on top to help prevent us from falling through, but we don't want to walk around in the field of the roof on an older home like this.
Yeah, that's that dead zone you were talking about.
Yeah, and then this is just completely random. So somebody put a piece of aluminum flashing over a hole to add some support, and but that if you stepped right there, you'll know it. It may not fall through, but you'll know it. That's a pretty big hole there. And you see lots of places where there's broken boards just hanging down. So just a view across the attic. This was the main part of the attic, and there was some areas that we couldn't get into.
I can see one unit is insulated and one unit wasn't very well. Looks like they insulated with insulation just on one side.
Yeah, I bet they just bought some and they ran out.
Oh, okay.
Like they got tired of trying to push it through that little slot. Can you imagine taking all that insulation through that small hole? They had to feed it through like a dollar bill machine.
Just open it up.
Yeah. So just another picture of the way it's framed. So you know, we don't have any collar ties here. I did have some pictures from the ground view that I didn't put in the presentation, but the roof's kind of wonky. I'm told wonky is a Southern term. I don't know if it is or not, but kind of wonky. It's not very level looking, and it just doesn't meet today's standards. And we don't go in and when we see something like this, we kind of take like it's sort of it is what it is approach. Like it doesn't meet current standards, and we have a generic comment that says that it wasn't framed using current standards, and it may benefit from additional support. I think that's the easy way to say it. So you're not telling them that they need to reframe the roof, but in areas where if we saw any substantial sagging issues, we might tell them that they should have a framer add some support. But this has been here since 1945. You know. Framing is one of the things that can stand the test of time. Electrical systems, not so much, but framing, if it stays dry. Do you agree with that?
Yep. So let's see. I remember a turbine vent on the top, right?
Yeah.
And is that a gable vent at the very far that I see by the chimney?
There's turbine vents and gable vents, and there are soffit vents in the vinyl, but I don't know if there were soffit vents in the old soffit. But the gable vents are very small. They're like maybe like 6 by 10 inches. I
Yeah.
think there's a picture of one in another space, but you can see there's the insulation's packed all the way up to the end there.
Yeah. And so for existing homes, like as a home inspector, you see all these problems, you can make all kinds of recommendations to fix and repair stuff. But when it comes to making recommendations to improve something, like improve the ventilation, that's a sticky kind of conversation because
Yeah.
how old's this home? 70 years old. It's been that way forever. That's a good argument. And there are modern codes and best practices to ventilate it well or to bring some collar ties in. But I don't think that's the path a home inspector needs to go down. We really need to focus in on what our purpose is there at that house, especially an old house like this. There's so much going on, so much wrong. And you can just go down, you can be there all day, all week, making recommendations and explaining why you made those recommendations.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, I was kind of revisiting collar ties, and I think I went back into the InterNACHI training, and it said that you should not recommend collar ties on an older home, or you shouldn't call it out as a defect anyway. So because I used to point it out on every one, and you hate to see someone divert their resources to something like that when there's something more important that they could spend their money to fix.
Exactly. Yep.
It's so frustrating when you go back to verify repairs and you're like, why did you ask for these things? You have these other things. I mean, that's if they did, it's because we kind of failed them in a way, So we offered in the email that goes out with the report, it says, if you have any, it's actually to the agent. It says, if you need any help, writing a repair request, wording it, we're happy to help because so many times, well, also when we go back out, we're not doing a reinspection. We're just verifying that the repairs were done as they were asked, because this is, it's the day before closing. We're not there to point out who did what well. We're just there to point out that the contract, what they agreed to, and the amendment to the contract was done.
Very good.
Sorry, I think I'm going the wrong way. So yeah, some of these, I guess, I'm not 100% sure what the function is of these. Is this holding the load because it's not sufficient? Is it preventing rafter spread? Is it kind of more like a collar tie than a strut?
Yeah, it's load. I think it's for load, but I can take a look. I think well, I don't know what the terminology is, but it seems to be holding load. It's not for spread, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that popped off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a couple of them that were loose like that.
Yep.
So here's the entrance to another part of the attic. And
right. Easy.
Yeah, so some poor guy had to crawl through there to insulate that. So I crawled up there just to see what it looked like. And there's insulation in there. And they went to town over on this side with their additional support. I'm not sure what was going on to warrant that, but maybe they were just like nailing extra things. I don't know. I got one picture of that area. And then went back to the chimney. So the chimney's abandoned, so none of this really matters. But we can see that there's some charred wood here. That kind of that was interesting because the decking's not charred around it, so they must have had to replace some of the decking at some point, I would guess. Not really sure. And then has improper clearances from the chimney, which is on every home inspector exam, I believe. It's supposed to be 2 inches inside the structure and 1 inch outside, but that 2-inch rule is on every home inspector exam that I've ever seen. So yeah, and then kind of our normal electrical issues that we find in an old attic, open boxes and older wire. And, you know, our bathroom vents is venting into the attic space. The wiring's not secured. It's just spliced outside of the vent. So, you know, when we were talking about attic ventilation earlier, one of the things about Georgia is that when we see bathroom vents vented to attic spaces, it's very common. You know, they don't do it in new construction, but it's very common to see it. And we just don't see problems with it if the attic's ventilated. So that's kind of been one of the things that we think about if we see a bathroom vent. Of course, we're going to recommend that it goes to the outside of the house, but I think this attic is breathing well enough because there's no mold problems in this area. If it was not ventilated well, we would expect to see mold. You know, in some parts of the country, probably in Colorado, this is going to be a major problem. It's just not a major problem here. And then there was some water staining on the rafters below that chimney, and there's some staining on the ceiling in the living space where it dripped down, but it was dry. So I think the bucket of tar or the second layer of shingles did its job. And then just some pictures of different electrical issues. We've got dead outlets. We've got broken covers, ungrounded outlets. Of course, the wiring doesn't have a ground, so we can't have a grounded outlet. And then the three-prong outlets that we have are not grounded. So, you know, that's problematic in a home like this. Do you tell them to rewire the whole house, or do you tell them to put in GFCI outlets? I would tell them they need to rewire the house in this case. But, you know, at the end of it, there's just so many issues with the electrical system. That's really the only solution is to rewire the house. And so we got ungrounded, exposed wiring here, just lots of wiring exposed on the inside. And then some gas lines that aren't capped off. So I think both of these were from gas dryers. So each side had 100 amps, and they had accommodations for gas dryers. We don't see a lot of gas dryers here, but and then under a sink, we're missing a shutoff here, and we got, I think everything had an S-trap. They love S-traps, and they love flexible connectors too. And this sink was wet underneath there, and there's lots of mold on the wall behind it, so it's been leaking for a while. And I'm not sure how long this house has been vacant, so it's probably pretty substantial. So, you know, we check the appliances, and we try not to beat them up too bad, but I always report if the ice maker was turned off. So we check to see if there's no ice, we see if it was turned off. We just have a button we press that says it was turned off. You know, depending on the disposition of the client, in today's market, they're not going to get any concessions over a broken crisper bin, but some people want you to put that in there. So, you know. The olives were great, by the way. So this is that underneath the metal roof. So obviously it's leaked, but what I thought was interesting was they had a fire over here also. So someone has painted this charred wood here. And there's just nothing underneath that metal roof. There's this OSB and nothing to assist it. It's just that really needs to come off, or put down like a rolled roof would be better, or something for a flat roof. Mm-hmm. So more S-traps. Had a wonderful upgrade here, the cardboard base. So just lifted that up, got some places for rodents to come in from below. And the toilet was turned off. I turned it on just to test it, and then I turned it back off when I was done. But someone replaced the flapper with the wrong flapper. The chain's too short. It just doesn't work at all. And then the bathtub, all the piping in the wall was loose. So we use Spectora, I mentioned before. We can put videos in the reports. So we would have a video of this, just us showing that it doesn't actually close, and a video showing that this is all loose. But also this has been patched before also, and we always recommend if we can see that it's been patched, then we know it wasn't done by a professional, and there's a high probability that it's going to leak, and we want them to have that addressed. So this was interesting. The sink was supported by these 2 wood dowels, and when you walk past it, the dowel falls off. Just from your body weight resting on the subfloor. And then mouse poop in the light. Sometimes we see scorpions in the lights, and never really figured out why. It's kind of random, but even on the second floor of homes, we've seen scorpions in the light, and the only thing I can imagine is that they're following the cable, and at some point they're attracted to the light. I really don't know. It's bizarre. I wish I have some old pictures somewhere of light fixtures with scorpions in them, little tiny scorpions. So moving on to the cellar, there's a cellar and a crawl space, and went through both of them. I should have started with just a picture of what I saw when I opened the door, because it was like ductwork was hanging in the way. I had to push it out of the way, and just like wires and pipes everywhere. But this was actually wet. There was a drop of water here, so we got a small leak on the water line. I was happy to see that they used duct tape for at least one of their repairs. So they capped off this line here to the vents on the outside. Lots going on in the background too.
Yeah.
And I always write up these hangers when, you're not supposed to have metal hangers on plastic pipes. And I write them up because I had a realtor years ago. I did an inspection for him, and after he moved in, he was buying the house for himself. And after he moved in, he was in his crawl space, and his dog bumped into a pipe that was hanging from a plastic hanger like that. It was about 2 feet long, and broke the pipe. And he blamed me.
Why?
I don't know. Like, why is your dog in the crawl space? My first question. But it's because they move around, and PVC pipe needs to have rigid support, and the reason you don't have metal hangers on it is because it's just easy to break. Yeah. Somebody bumps into it. Yeah. But down here you can't really tell what's supporting what anyway. So it's got some additional support by the duct, and it's holding these cables, and not really sure who's holding who. But that's something we make a note of it. We don't make a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
So lots going on here, lots of different types.
Fun mess.
Piping. I think I got a close up of that. Yeah. So just sitting on a block. There was also some water on the floor here. So I was looking at it for a minute, trying to figure out which of these connections it was leaking out of. And then I looked up and I saw that.
Is that supposed to be together?
Yeah.
It drains better if it's separated.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Fix that clog. So, yeah. And then lots of just weird repairs in here. So they've obviously fixed this section. I can't tell if this is an approved glue here, but that's what they used. So do we have any questions?
Yeah, I have one. So what do you use in a crawl space? We used to have full body suits and caps and respirators and gloves and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, sometimes I wonder if we don't go far enough, but I've always just worn a pair of Dickies coveralls with zipper vests, but we use a respirator. I don't use a full face respirator.
No.
but I used to wear goggles, but they get fogged up. But instead of that, so yeah, we wear gloves. Also, I use concrete over boots for
Mm,
concrete work. They've lasted for a long time. They're indestructible. Um, so, but but the best tool I found for crawl space is a Dandelion Weeder. Are you familiar with this tool? It's like a maybe a 32 to 36-inch long wooden handle with just a small
ah,
metal piece on the end and a little V on the end.
yeah,
And it's for cutting a dandelion off at the root. You know, you can just walk around and poke at them. You know,
yeah.
I don't know who does that kind of thing, but I bet it's very satisfying. But the dandelion weeder is an awesome tool for a crawl space because you can, you know, if you run into any wildlife, you can defend yourself at more of a distance.
Yep.
But it's great for pulling back insulation. And you know, we don't have to pull back insulation. It's you know, things that we can't see. We kind of have an alibi on that, but we always pull back insulation below doors, below exterior doors, at deck attachments,
Yep.
and below plumbing fixtures, especially shower pans.
Yep.
So we always move them in those areas, and you don't want to be under it because then you don't want the fiberglass falling in your eyes.
Yep.
You don't want the mouse poop falling in your eyes, and you don't
Right.
want the snake to fall on your face either.
Yep.
So I highly recommend that tool.
That just ruins
Uh,
your day.
yeah,
Mark says, look, is it going to cost more to renovate this house for safe occupancy than it would to just tear this house down and build a new one? You know,
the price of lumber.
yeah, price of lumber, right. It's going back to that thing. What do you say when it's really bad? And so like I'm a code inspector, and InterNACHI has a code course to help you prepare to take the code exam. And in the course, you might be interested as a home inspector to take the code course, not to be a code inspector, but within every code course, there is training for the code official who has the authority to condemn things. You know, and it has this training where you can draw this line, where you can say, this is bad, it needs to be repaired, or this is so bad, I'm not going to let anybody occupy the house or use this particular system, or I'm going to shut this down. So it might be of interest for home inspectors to take InterNACHI's. It's a free online code course. Just go to our education page and search for a code, and the code course will pop up. But hardly ever, home inspectors should not be at the point of saying, we got to tear this house down. You shouldn't be going down that path at all. Just observe and report, and be careful with things like using a D9 as a solution to your observations.
Yeah, that also kind of depends on where you are. Also, there are some cities have adopted the I think it's the International Property Maintenance Code.
Yep.
And if you're doing an inspection in a place like that, then you really need to understand what they may require, because you know, in places like in the city of Atlanta, for example, if you want to change an outlet, you may have to bring the house up to code, and you know, you don't want your clients to be surprised by something like that. So one thing we always tell our clients on an older home like this with electrical is that in our the jurisdiction that I live in anyway, if you want to do a 50% upgrade on the system, if the code official determines that you're replacing 50%, he's going to require 100% compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to be in a position where you've kind of put it in their head that they're going to get somebody to come in for $400 or $500 and make a few of these repairs that you thought were important, and then the next thing they know, they have to do $8,000 to $10,000 worth of electrical work.
Yep.
And because so there's also there is a code. I wish I could. It's electrical inspections for. Well, no, that's a book. There is an electrical code for existing dwellings. I can't remember what it's called though. It's a thin red book, but I used to use that as a reference.
Yeah, the IRC has a code book for existing buildings.
Yeah, that's well, at least
And
there's one for electrical, and it's great to say, it says like if an outlet has paint on it, it should be replaced.
yeah,
Yeah, because most realtors are going to fight that, and if you say, well, it's in this is like the existing, this is what the existing code says should
yeah,
be done.
not new construction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. It's the International Property Maintenance Code. That's a good code book for it. But just this picture, I love this picture. There's so many things, and just in this picture, it's really incredible. The insulation on the ductwork, the 2x4 supporting the rotten flooring above, the two dissimilar kind of drain pipes. I see electrical wiring that's not in a box. It just goes on.
Yeah. And then and then this missing insulation on this boot, that causes a lot of damage where we live. If there's, especially when you have water flowing through a crawl space, because that turns into water vapor, and that's where it condenses. It gets wicked into the wood, and then everything rots.
John asks, do you charge for your post repair inspection that you mentioned before?
We do, and we felt guilty about that for a long time, and because what would happen is they would call you because they're anxious and you want to help your clients.
Yeah.
And you're really the only one that can do it. So we had this struggle for a long time. We try to squeeze them in over our lunch break or after hours, and maybe charge like $45 or something. But what we did to solve this problem was we started telling them in the email with the report delivery that says, if you would like to have us verify repairs, we would love to do so, and we charge $195. And so we are missing out on a full inspection if we do that, but if we're gonna do it during an inspection slot, we need to get something for it. So
yep. You got to charge for the value you provide, not necessarily the time.
And so many people ask for it now. It's we do a couple of them a week, and they're happy to pay for it. So it's not like we're springing it on them at the last minute when they're desperate for answers. So just more, there's just lots going on here. This is sort of below that side deck. And there's a septic system in the back, but you can see water. It looks like water seeps in through this wall.
Sure.
And then I don't know where this pipe goes to, but I would seal that off just to make sure it's not connected to the septic system somehow. So a little drop of water right here. So and they use this old pipe. That pipe just looks horrible. Yep. This is under the tub. I couldn't find any water up here, so it was coming out of the side of this pipe. It's got a little bit of a crack in it.
Oh, why did they keep the cast iron?
I don't know.
They kept a piece of old cast iron pipe in between new PVC.
Yeah, yeah, that's bizarre. I think it's too much fall there also, but I didn't put a tape measure on it. So as far as other tools I take in the crawl space, take a camera. I don't like to take my phone in there, even though the software is on the phone. And then a voltage detector and a moisture meter. And then this is just wild right here. We've got capped off copper lines, connectors. Yeah, mess. Yeah, so I don't even know what I was taking a picture of here. It could be the rot. I guess there's some missing wood here. A couple different types of piping. This old PVC, I find that it's very brittle. I always warn my inspectors to be very careful around it, because if you bump it, it might just snap.
Yep.
Here's some more weirdness. Why there's a shutoff valve here, I don't know. It's not the main shutoff. This was leaking. This was a little wet right here. And this is my second favorite find.
Huh.
So we fixed a water line with a piece of rubber.
Yeah. A clamp. Hey, it's not leaking.
Yeah, it's not. Here, just more unsupported water lines just sagging down from the weight, or maybe they put it in that way. I don't know.
Hmm.
So this was the main water shut off is right here, and I wasn't really, so this is in the cellar area still, and there's another hose bib here. So this was all kind of a mess, but I wanted to track down that water line. So this hose, you know, I thought maybe this was water going out, you know, so it goes out through the foundation wall, but it's leaving below grade.
Hmm.
So I've walked around in the yard and I found it. It's connected over here. So this is an old wellhead, and it's been covered up. I should have gotten another picture, but this was, I guess this was on a well at some point.
Hmm.
And I'm guessing that water was going the other direction. That's a weird way to connect it.
Yeah.
And then there was some wiring out here next to the old wellhead. And you know, these voltage detectors, they can give you false positives, and I couldn't figure out why this would give me a false positive. But I wasn't gonna just grab the conductors to see if they were hot. So yeah, I'm not really sure about this one, if that was really live or not.
Yeah.
You know, because it didn't, this particular voltage detector, it doesn't, it's not tripped by low voltage. I think it's like at like 90 amps maybe is where it starts picking things up. But it wasn't making any noise, and it usually beeps. It just lit up.
Hmm.
There's a guy in Minneapolis, Structure Tech. He does a lot of stuff online, and he has a video about these voltage detectors that I think every home inspector needs to watch, because he shows you how to cheat them, how to make them go off when there's no voltage.
Huh.
We see a lot of stuff on social media, or people will ask you about it, but I've seen people have these set off by PVC pipe before, or just random things that could not possibly have been energized, you know,
Yeah.
or they touched and they weren't energized. But so yeah, so an electrician needs to look at that. So we got two water heaters. This one is it's a 97 40 gallon. Looking pretty rough. It used to have an insulated jacket on it, but the rodents, the weight of the rodents and their feces probably made it fall off. So at least it's not on the ground. It is elevated. I was happy to see that. But corroded at the bottom, and TPR, it's not piped at all.
Yep.
You know, we got copper and galvanized here. There's another water heater, because this was a duplex. So this is a 07 50 gallon. This one is sitting on some broken block in the corner in a low spot. And no, we don't believe in TPRs here, so it's not one. And this was old gas line. So we've got galvanized on the gas line. This was abandoned though, but I went ahead and took a picture of it anyway. They had, there's another run of gas line. And then CSST, we talked about that earlier. Should be bonded. And this was my favorite one. The reason there's a red arrow here is because I used it in an email that we sent out to realtors talking about skipping home inspections, you know, desperate buyers skipping home inspections. Yep. So this is a gas line with a clamp on it. Like, I've never seen that before. I've seen it on water lines before, but I've never seen it on a gas line. And we also, if we see saddle valves, we write those up also, because they end up, they leak eventually, a saddle valve on a gas line. But this was this is could be really dangerous. So the gas was off. We didn't smell anything. And then these two go to each other. There's a old outlet run over to a new one, little plug. That's custom.
Oh, That's nice.
So yeah, some old wire, just some extra support. Let's just scab it together however we can.
Yeah.
Some more older wire. I'm
Boy,
not sure
that's
if I was
fun.
taking a picture of the wire, the rotted joist,
Yeah.
or the mold on everything, but
Joist doesn't even exist at the end there.
no, it doesn't. The extra layer of subfloor is holding itself up. So this is the first panel. There were two down there. So they're both 100 amp panels.
In the
And
crawl space.
yeah, yeah. Well, this is this is actually, this is in the cellar, I guess. I would consider it a crawl space. This is obviously a wet area, so it doesn't belong down there. But I think whoever installed it would probably try to argue that that was technically a cellar. You couldn't find a set of stairs to put it over, so you had to put it there. So not really too many things wrong. We have like there's some double lug neutrals. I think one of these is double lugs. If anybody sees anything else, we're missing a grommet, and this is backfed main is not bolted in. So you know, if this breaker is removed, it's still going to be hot. So and then just sloppy.
And do you always take the dead front off?
I would say that, but the second panel I did not. But the pretty much what we usually do. I think there's sometimes we won't. Trying to think of one actually, but there's yeah, if it's really, if it's painted to the wall or if it's caulked to the wall, that's really where we draw the line. If it's painted to the wall, we'll score it and try to get it off. But if it's caulked to the wall, it's really more about causing damage than anything else. But if my inspectors don't feel safe doing it, I don't expect them to.
Yeah.
But this next one here, this one is right in front of the water heater. It's low clearance anyway. I mean, I can't stand up straight to do this. And I don't want to be, you know, since the wiring in this place is so sketchy, I don't want to be touching a grounded appliance while taking this cover off. So this one I didn't remove. I don't want to try to put the cover back on that thing either, you know?
Yeah.
So some of the sidewall here is rotted out. I think that's what I was taking a picture of. It's hard to tell.
Yep. Wow.
So yeah, here we've got, this is really common in older homes. You see some kind of like some makeshift support. It's not, there are no nails holding this up. So I guess they used the service entrance cable to keep some tension on it. And then another one here, this is a screw jack. So you see the bottom, there's no plate on the bottom, and that's not concrete. So I guess it's just sunk in. I don't know. But this one also, we have some water line here that we've used an old bungee strap to hold on to our metal column here.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is something we see a lot, is these get called out as temporary support. You know, and it's, you know, they say that it wasn't designed as permanent support. And I don't know, how do I can tell you how we handle that, like, but I'm curious how you handle these. We've seen lots of home inspectors talk about it and seen articles written about it. But whenever we see additional support added that wasn't original, we try to figure out, like, think about why they added it and what is it really doing. And we would recommend adding permanent support, but we don't really make a big deal about it not being engineered for permanent support.
Right.
But I used to just really nitpick at these, like, it doesn't have a positive connection at the top or the bottom. It's not, it's missing a pin here. It's got corrosion on it. It's not designed to be permanently there, but I'm not really sure why it's here. it may be here to hold this water line. I'm not sure.
Right. It's probably another problem.
Yeah.
You know, maybe the floor bounces or there's something above it that has to be part of the story.
Yeah.
The problem isn't necessarily that it's a temporary
Yeah.
solution to something
Yeah.
that's
It's not.
right.
Probably doesn't have an important job to do.
Yeah.
So that kind of some more rot. And then I think this is where we get into, this is just the ductwork. This is all from the cellar also, but just, there's lots, it's torn insulation. There's been some nesting here. That's probably, it just gets worse from there, but we've got no insulation on the metal here on these metal connection, or I guess this is just to fasten it, but you can see this just tells me this is a very wet environment sometimes, and we have water flowing through. It hasn't rained. It had not rained substantially in several weeks when I was down there, so it wasn't damp and it didn't feel humid. But vented crawl spaces, they don't always work well. So when we see stuff like this, we know that there's really high humidity. And I think we caught this duct in the background earlier, but this is just completely missing insulation. This piece is missing insulation. So getting into the crawl space, just kind of more electrical issues. I like finding old bottles in crawl spaces. I looked this one up. This was made in 1947 in Virginia. Kind of a distinct label, but it had a red soda in it. It wasn't from a place called Red Rock. It was the soda is actually red. Yeah. So getting in the crawl space area. So we've got these duct boots that don't have insulation on them, and we're seeing mold around them, and also this duct, this is staying very wet. So those are water stains inside that duct. So we have water just running down into the low area of the duct, and we have water wicking into the wood. And there's kind of some different mold species here. So this lighter mold is growing farther away, but this just tells us that this mold needs a lot of water and this mold needs less water. That's really the end of the story, but it's just different molds, lots of water. So they've added some beams through the crawl space here. Beam's kind of interesting. It's not really holding anything in some places. It's not touching anything, but I guess if the floors fall, the beam will catch them. They got a couple inches to go. So this was that side porch that had the terrible flat roof that had the mushrooms growing out of it. So on the outside of the porch, I noticed that the vent was wide open, and this is where it connects with the crawl space. So this is just another entry for animals. And then there's termite damage right here. There's termite tunnels on the surface of the wood. And there was also some droppings down there that looked like they were from a raccoon or a possum or a cat. Like cats will turn a crawl space into a litter box. And if there's much of that, we won't go through it. But it was just some in a specific area. So more problems with the ductwork. It's a shame this HVAC system is not that old, but the ductwork needs to be replaced. So more termites. I was hoping to find some that were active. Termites are weird. If you break the tunnel, they leave. If in Georgia, you're required to remove the tunnel when you do the treatment. So it's generally assumed if you see a termite tunnel, whether there's termites in it or not, you have an active infestation. So it's kind of more wires. This was interesting. This stack of blocks was under the hearth extension. So they had run hardwood over the hearth extension. It was flush with the original floor, I guess, but this just looked kind of cool. Wish I had a better picture of it actually, but I don't know why they put that there. And then these were some sort of I don't know if what this was originally designed for, but this was kind of like a a piece of steel that they had supported with these blocks underneath the floor joist. And this one slipped over, but there's one in the back where it's just run below the floor joist. It's really bizarre. Somebody went to a lot of trouble to add this support underneath here. Open junction boxes. Here's where the beam's not touching at all. This was under that side room where the ceiling was damaged. So they've had some termite damage under there. It looks like that was a porch at one point also. And then, you know, not insulated. And this one's actually not really connected. This is what's keeping the crawl space dry, this little bit of air blowing in there. And the Insole Brick. I think Insole Brick's a cool product. We don't see it very often, but it's all been covered up by underneath the vinyl, but we see some from the crawl space. So sometimes people ask if that has asbestos or not. I can't really get a straight answer. The closest thing I've gotten is that there is probably asbestos, but it's probably encapsulated by the tar. Huh. Not sure. And this is the front of the house. So, you know, you can tell water flows through here, and you can look at what's left of the vapor barrier, and you can see that water flows across it, but lots of places for animals to get in.
That's where that hole was kind of dug by the front porch.
Yeah, it is actually. It probably would come in right here at this corner, I think. So, but yeah, the crawl space was a mess. Well, I think that's my last slide. Honestly, I didn't think we would get through them all. That was 143 slides.
That was awesome. That's a lot of fun. That is, you would say that's an unusual house to come by.
It is, but you know, when you get in a crawl space on an older house, that's where all the action is really. And even we see so many homes that have been renovated, and you know, maybe on the inside they've done some things to clean up the wiring. Maybe they put some GFCIs in, but you get underneath and you start to see things like that. So our crawl spaces on an older home, we see lots of electrical hazards. We don't usually see panels in the crawl space.
Yeah.
But this house, they will have to rewire it if they do any renovations. It's the county's going to require it. And so I think they need to know that, and they need to do something about the moisture, because this crawl space air, so the crawl space is vented very well because the doors are open. There's lots of holes in the side. A lot of that water probably runs out the back. But if they don't fix this drainage problem, they're gonna have more mold problems and indoor air quality problems. Yep. You know, if you may fix one thing and exacerbate these problems. You know.
Yeah, there's only so much ventilation can fix. I mean, if there's an active water penetration coming into the crawl space and foundation area on every rainstorm, yeah, water is what is it? It provides life, but it can destroy, and it's a real pain in the butt. So whenever we go in and find any kind of problem, you got to find the source of the problem. It's the water. It's the water. It's always the water that does the most damage. Just like that deck. That deck is damaged by water. It's not really the sun. It's really water, and then just makes things move and separate.
Yeah.
So I think, Mike, that was a fantastic slideshow and a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I think all inspectors would really enjoy watching that. So I really appreciate your time that you spent with us and going over all those defects in the house. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the invitation. That was fun for me too.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Maybe we'll do it again sometime. Thanks everybody for attending, and we'll see you on the next InterNACHI webinar. Stay safe and healthy, everybody. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
See ya.